The hardest part about foreclosing on your own parents is maintaining your posture when they brag about the private equity firm that is about to evict them. It is a Friday evening in February, and I am standing under the crystal chandeliers of the Baton Rouge Chamber of Commerce ballroom. I am wearing an emerald silk gown that cost $1,200. I bought it with my own money. My mother Diane spots me near the silent auction tables. She is wearing sequined taffeta that catches the light like a warning signal. My father Richard walks beside her. Trailing just behind them, adjusting the cuffs of a rented tuxedo jacket, is Marcus, the man I had loved for 4 years. My father stops close enough that I can smell the bourbon on his breath. He speaks just loud enough for the country club members at the next table to hear. "We heard you were living out of a warehouse, Elena." His tone drips with a specific brand of Southern pity meant to humiliate. Marcus steps forward. He holds out a drink ticket. He smiles, the tight, patronizing smile of a man who thinks he holds all the cards. "If you need a short-term loan for rent, just let me know. Vanguard Holdings just acquired my mortgage, and the new servicer has been incredibly generous with my terms." I look at Marcus. I look at my mother, who is watching me closely, waiting for my face to crumble, waiting for me to run to the restroom in tears. I do not flinch. I take a slow sip of my champagne. The crystal glass is cold against my fingers. I look them straight in the eye and say, "It is wonderful that you found such an understanding lender." What I do not tell them is that Vanguard Holdings is a shell company I registered 3 months ago. I do not tell them that at exactly midnight, the automated system will email their formal notice of default, tying their primary residence to Marcus and his failing credit. I simply smile and walk away. Welcome back to Aura Vengeance. This is the place where silent daughters stop shrinking and start building empires in the dark. How old were you when you realized your family loved their image more than they loved you? Drop your age and your story in the comments and hit subscribe so you never miss a reckoning. How does a woman go from sleeping in a used sedan to holding her family's debt in a manila folder? Let me take you back 8 months. The erasure of my life as a daughter started on a Tuesday in April. Marcus and I shared a leased apartment on Perkins Road. I came home from my job as a supply chain logistics director to find him packing his golf clubs into a duffel bag. He did not look at me. He said we had incompatible life trajectories. He said my ambition to start my own logistics firm was too risky and he needed stability. He gave me 48 hours to remove my things from the apartment since his name was the only one on the lease. I walked into the kitchen to process what was happening. That is when I saw it. Sitting on the granite counter was a thick envelope from a local title company. The flap was torn open. Inside was a finalized mortgage agreement for a property in Spanish Town. The purchase price was $450,000. I slid the heavy paper out of the envelope. My vision blurred for a second, but the black ink remained sharp. The primary borrower was Marcus. Below his name were 2 co-signers, Richard and Diane Dixon, my parents. I traced my finger over my father's signature. On the second page, the settlement statement listed a $90,000 down payment. It noted the funds had been wired directly from my father's primary checking account. 2 years ago, I had sat at my parents' dining table with a printed business plan, asking them to co-sign a small business loan so I could launch my logistics company. My father had patted my hand and said they simply did not have the liquidity to support a risky gamble. Yet here they were, funding a house for the man who is currently throwing me out on the street. I stand in the kitchen of the Perkins Road apartment holding the settlement statement. The air conditioning unit kicks on. The vent rattles above the refrigerator. It is a mundane, mechanical sound, the kind of noise you only notice when the architecture of your life is quietly collapsing. I do not tear the heavy paper. I do not scream. I set the document back onto the granite island and slide my phone out of my pocket. I open the camera application. I hold my breath to steady my hands and take 3 clear photographs of the signature page. The digital shutter clicks sound like a gavel striking wood. The math on the paper hums in my head. $90,000. My father is a proud man. He views his checking account as a ledger of his own morality. If he wired that sum to Marcus, it was an endorsement. It was a blessing. But something else tugs at the edges of my panic. The timing. Marcus works as a mid-tier account manager at a regional bank downtown. He understands the mechanics of lending. He understands liquidity and the flow of capital. A cold sensation blooms at the base of my neck. I close the camera app. I open my mobile banking application. The screen glows a harsh blue in the dim kitchen light. The loading icon spins for 3 seconds. I select the joint escrow account. Marcus and I opened this specific account 11 months ago. I had been funneling every spare paycheck, every holiday bonus, every tax return into it. The goal was precise. It was the seed capital required to register my logistics firm with the state of Louisiana, secure the commercial liability insurance, and lease a starter fleet of 2 used freight trucks. The balance yesterday afternoon was $14,000. It was the price of my future freedom. The screen finishes loading. The balance reads $0.00. I stare at the digits. I tap the screen to refresh the data. The numbers remain empty. I click on the Transaction History tab. There is a single line item resting at the top of the ledger. Outgoing wire transfer. $14,000. The timestamp reads 8:02 in the morning. At 8:02 this morning, Marcus was sitting across from me at the breakfast table. He was pouring a second cup of dark roast coffee. He was looking me in the eye and explaining that my entrepreneurial ambitions were a strain on our relationship. He was delivering his breakup speech while his thumb rested on the digital confirmation button hidden under the edge of the table. Because my LLC formation was not yet filed with the Secretary of State, the bank legally categorized our joint fund as a standard shared checking account. The institution required no dual authorization for withdrawals. Either signatory could drain it. Marcus used his professional knowledge of banking loopholes to bleed my seed money dry. He orchestrated the vulnerability from the day we signed the paperwork. I hear the scuff of leather shoes against the hardwood floor. Marcus walks into the kitchen. He is carrying a stack of my winter coats. He drops them onto a bar stool. He sees me looking at my phone. He sees the manila envelope resting beside my hand on the granite. He does not avert his gaze. His posture remains perfectly straight. "Did you really think I would leave that document behind, Elena?" he asks. His voice is smooth. It is the exact tone he uses to deny loan applications at his office. "You stole $14,000, I say. My voice is quiet. I focus on the rhythmic rattling of the air conditioning vent so my hands will not shake. "I reclaimed my time," he replies. He steps toward the refrigerator and opens it, pulling out a bottle of sparkling water. 4 years is a significant investment. I consider that money a severance fee for the delays you caused in my life plan. Besides, your parents agreed. I watch him unscrew the cap. The hiss of the carbonation sounds like a snake in the quiet room. "My parents agreed to let you steal my business capital." Richard views it as a reallocation of resources, Marcus says. He takes a drink. He leans his hip against the counter. "Your father and I discussed this on the back nine at the club last weekend. He knows you lack the discipline to run a supply chain firm. He said you would burn the money on a pipe dream. I am purchasing tangible real estate in a historic district. They chose the better investment." I look at the man I shared a bed with for over 1,000 nights. He is wearing a tailored navy suit. His tie is perfectly knotted. My parents always loved his ties. They loved his job title. To my mother, my career in supply chain logistics meant dirty shipping warehouses, heavy freight manifests, and blue-collar mechanics. The grit of my industry embarrassed her at country club luncheons. Marcus, with his clean fingernails and low golf handicap, was a digestible asset. They bought him a house to keep him in their social circle, and they funded the down payment using the very money I bled to save. I turn off my phone screen. I slide it into my back pocket. I do not argue. Arguing requires an audience capable of shame. I walk past him into the bedroom. The closet is half empty. His suits are still hanging evenly on the left side. My clothes are shoved to the right. I pull 2 hard-shell suitcases from under the bed. I do not fold anything. I grab handfuls of blouses, slacks, and jeans. I pack them into the luggage. I take my toothbrush. I take my work laptop and my chargers. I leave the expensive espresso machine I bought him for his birthday. I leave the framed photographs on the nightstand. I leave the pair of diamond earrings my mother gave me last Christmas, knowing now they were bought to control my image, not to celebrate my existence. He stands in the doorway watching me. He checks his silver watch. You have until Thursday to get the rest of the boxes out of the hall closet. After that, I am calling the property manager to change the locks. I zip the first suitcase. The metal teeth bite together with a sharp sound. I zip the second suitcase. I grip the plastic handles. I walk toward the bedroom door. He has to step backward into the hallway to let me pass. I keep my eyes focused on the front door of the apartment. I leave the apartment keys on top of the manila envelope on the kitchen island. I open the front door. The Louisiana humidity hits my face like a damp towel. It is suffocating. I drag my luggage down the concrete stairs of the apartment complex. The wheels clatter against the steps in a rhythmic, hollow drumbeat. I reach the parking lot. My Toyota Corolla is parked under a sprawling live oak tree. The paint on the hood is starting to peel from the relentless sun. I pop the trunk. I lift the heavy suitcases and drop them inside. I shut the trunk. The sound echoes across the empty asphalt. I slide into the driver's seat. I insert the key into the ignition, but I do not turn it. The steering wheel is hot beneath my palms. I am 31 years old. I hold a director-level title at a corporate logistics firm. I manage millions of dollars in freight routing every single week. Yet I am sitting in a used car with $0 in my savings account. I have been legally evicted by a man my family prefers over me. My chest tightens. The reality of the logistics settles over me like wet concrete. I make $85,000 a year, but securing a new lease in Baton Rouge requires first month, last month, and a security deposit. Without that $14,000, I am locked out of the housing market. This is not a misunderstanding. This is not a temporary family disagreement. My parents guided my ex-boyfriend through a banking loophole to drain my accounts and secure his mortgage. They left a paper trail. They signed their names in black ink on official county records. They assumed I would simply absorb the loss because I had always absorbed their subtle rejections in the past. I grip the steering wheel. The worn leather bites into my palms. The question ringing in my ears is no longer where I will sleep tonight. The question is how to survive a betrayal that bears the legal signatures of the people who raised me. I turn the key. The engine sputters and catches. I shift the car into drive. I know exactly where I need to go. I pull out of the apartment complex and point the car toward the Garden District. I need to look my mother in the eye. The drive to the Garden District takes 14 minutes. The streets transition from the cracked asphalt of Perkins Road to smooth pavement shaded by centuries-old live oak trees. The properties here are set far back from the curb, guarded by wrought iron gates and manicured azalea bushes. My parents' house sits at the end of a long circular driveway. It is a 2-story colonial revival with pristine white columns. It is the house where I learned to ride a bicycle. It is the house where I spent my teenage years studying logistics manuals while my mother planned country club luncheons. I park the Corolla behind my father's silver Lexus. I do not walk up to the heavy oak front door and ring the chime. I have my own key. I walk up the brick steps, slide the heavy brass key into the lock, and push the door open. The house smells like lemon polish and fresh lilies. The air conditioning is set to a crisp 68 degrees. It is a sterile, perfect environment. I hear the low murmur of a television coming from the kitchen. I walk down the hallway. My heels click against the polished hardwood floors. My parents are sitting at the sprawling granite island. My father, Richard, is wearing a pressed golf shirt. He is reading the Wall Street Journal. My mother, Diane, is arranging a vase of white hydrangeas. She is wearing a silk blouse and her signature string of pearls. It is a picturesque Tuesday morning scene for a retired executive and his socialite wife. They look up when I enter. Neither of them smiles. The air in the room shifts, dropping 10 degrees. I walk directly to the granite island. I pull my phone from my pocket. I pull up the digital bank statement showing the zero balance and the outgoing wire transfer. I set the phone down precisely between my father's newspaper and my mother's flower arrangement. I do not yell. I keep my voice flat and even. Marcus stole $14,000 from my business account to fund the down payment on the Spanish Town property. You co-signed the loan. My mother does not flinch. She does not gasp or feign surprise. She sets down a stem of hydrangea. She reaches for a microfiber cloth resting near the sink. She begins to wipe a non-existent speck of dust off the pristine granite surface. Her movements are slow and deliberate. Marcus is stable, Elena, she says. Her voice is a weaponized calm. It is the tone she uses to dismiss waitstaff who bring the wrong vintage of wine. He has a future in corporate management. You are always chasing risky ventures in a dirty industry. We consider Marcus a safer investment. I stare at her perfectly manicured hands tracing circles on the stone. You consider the man who just evicted your daughter a better investment than your own flesh and blood. My father folds his newspaper. The crinkle of the crisp paper echoes in the silent kitchen. He takes off his reading glasses and sets them next to my phone. Elena, do not be dramatic. We discussed this with him. That money was sitting stagnant in an account while you played pretend business owner. It went towards securing tangible real estate. You are 31 years old. You are too old to be throwing temper tantrums over a reallocation of capital. A reallocation of capital. He uses corporate terminology to sanitize theft. I look at the man who taught me how to read financial ledgers when I was 12 years old. I ask him for the $14,000 back. I tell him it was the seed money for my logistics firm. My father sighs. He rubs the bridge of his nose like I am a toddler asking for a toy he already threw away. We cannot reimburse you. We utilized our liquid funds to cover the property taxes on this house last month. We are asset rich, but cash flow restricted at the moment. You will simply have to rebuild your savings. Figure it out. The logic is a maze of entitlement. They are sitting in a multi-million-dollar colonial home, wearing designer clothes, claiming they cannot replace the money they helped a stranger steal from me. I take a slow breath. I push the anger down into a tight, hard box in my chest. The reality of my situation is a mathematical equation. I have $112 in my primary checking account. I have a car. I have 2 suitcases. I look at my mother. Since I no longer have the funds to secure a new lease, I need to stay in my old bedroom. Just for the week, until my next corporate paycheck clears and I can find a cheap studio apartment. My mother stops wiping the counter. She folds the microfiber cloth into a perfect square. She looks at my father, then back to me. She holds out her hand, palm up. Actually, Elena, she says, her voice lowering an octave, we are going to need your spare brass key back. I stare at her outstretched hand. I do not understand the request. Your father and I host the Garden Club Planning Committee here on Thursday evenings, she continues. We simply do not want you disrupting the house while you are clearly feeling so unstable. It is best if you find your own accommodations. It builds character. She is locking me out. She is looking at her daughter, knowing I have $0 and no shelter, and she is prioritizing a garden club meeting over my physical safety. The betrayal is no longer a financial transaction. It is a total severing of the maternal bond. She prefers the pristine optics of her colonial home over the survival of her child. I reach into my pocket. I pull out my key ring. The heavy brass house key clinks against the plastic fob for my Toyota. My grandfather gave me this key when I turned 16. I slide the metal ring apart. I unclip the brass key. The metal feels heavy in my palm. I hold it over the granite island. I do not place it gently into her waiting hand. I drop it onto the stone counter. The heavy brass makes a sharp, ringing clatter as it bounces against the granite. I pick up my phone. I turn my back on the woman who birthed me. I walk down the hallway, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor. I reach the heavy oak front door. I pull it open and step out into the stifling Louisiana heat. The door clicks shut behind me. The lock engages with a solid, final thud. I walk down the brick steps. I get into the driver's seat of the Corolla. The interior is baking in the sun. I grip the steering wheel. I look back at the colonial house. The white columns look like the bars of a cage I just escaped. I pull the car out of the circular driveway and merge onto the main road. I check my fuel gauge. I have a quarter tank of gas. I check my banking app again, hoping for a miracle glitch. The balance remains at $112. The void I have stepped into is vast and silent. I am a corporate director managing regional supply chains, and I am officially homeless. I drive toward the industrial sector of Baton Rouge. The sleek mansions fade into strip malls, fast food restaurants, and concrete warehouses. The sun begins to set, casting long, harsh shadows across the asphalt. I pull into the back parking lot of a sprawling gray building on Essen Lane. It is a 24-hour Planet Fitness. I park the car near the industrial dumpsters, facing a concrete retaining wall. I turn off the engine. The silence in the cabin is deafening. I recline the driver's seat as far back as it will go. I pull a wrinkled blazer from my suitcase to use as a blanket. The streetlights flicker on, casting a sickly orange glow through the windshield. I close my eyes. Tomorrow morning, I have to walk into my corporate office and route 50 tons of agricultural freight across 3 state lines. I have to smile at my colleagues. I have to pretend my life is a seamless trajectory of success. And then, I have to figure out how to build a logistics empire using a laptop and the free wireless internet of a budget gym. Because sitting in this car, staring at the concrete wall, I realize something fundamental about power. My family thinks they destroyed me. They think they neutralized a threat to their perfect social image. But they made a critical error. They left me with nothing to lose. And a woman with nothing to lose is the most dangerous asset on the board. The geometry of a used sedan is not designed for human rest. The driver's seat of a Toyota Corolla offers precisely 41 inches of legroom. When you pull the lever and recline the seat back, you achieve a 30-degree angle. For 63 consecutive days, that 30-degree incline was my sanctuary, my office, and my bed. The logistics of being secretly homeless while maintaining a 6-figure corporate job demand a rigorous, punishing discipline. You cannot look tired. You cannot smell like the damp upholstery of a vehicle baking in the Louisiana humidity. You must construct a flawless facade. My alarm blared every morning at 4:30. The sky above the Essen Lane parking lot was always pitch black, heavy with the suffocating Gulf Coast moisture. I would sit up, my lumbar spine aching, joints stiff from the lack of horizontal rest. I kept my professional wardrobe sealed in garment bags laying flat in the trunk, ensuring the fabric never wrinkled. I would gather a silk blouse, a tailored skirt, and my toiletry kit, then walk across the cracked asphalt toward the glowing purple neon sign of the Planet Fitness. This is where I met Tomas. Tomas was the night shift janitor. He was a man in his late 50s with calloused hands, silver hair pulled into a tight tie, and a faded denim work shirt. The first time I walked into the gym at 4:30 in the morning, carrying a clear plastic bag of shampoo and a corporate blazer, he was mopping the entryway. He paused. He looked at my clothes. He looked out the glass doors at my car parked near the industrial dumpsters. He did not ask questions. He did not offer unwanted pity. He simply nodded, dipped his mop back into the bucket, and said, "The hot water heater in the women's locker room takes 2 minutes to kick in. Let it run." Over the next 2 weeks, an unspoken rhythm developed between us. Tomas became the invisible guardian of my secret. He started leaving the heavy steel security door propped open by a fraction of an inch near the dumpsters, allowing me to access the staff break room without scanning a member card. When the gym manager left for the night, Tomas would unlock the staff microwave. He never mentioned the fact that my dinners consisted entirely of cheap peanut butter spread onto white bread. One night in early May, I was sitting on a bench outside the locker rooms. My laptop was balanced on my knees. I was staring at a complex spreadsheet of regional freight manifests, trying to calculate fuel surcharges. Tomas walked past, pushing a utility cart. He paused, squinting at my screen. "You have a deadhead route coming out of Shreveport," he said quietly. His voice carried the gravel of cigarette smoke and long nights. "The driver is going to lose his profit margin running empty back to New Orleans. Route him through Alexandria. There is a lumber yard that always needs surplus hauling on Thursdays." I looked up, stunned. I asked him how he knew the freight patterns of northern Louisiana. Tomas leaned against the handle of his cart. "I drove a Peterbilt flatbed for 22 years, he said, hauled timber, steel, and agricultural surplus from Texas to the Florida Panhandle. Knew every way station and loading dock on the coast." I asked him why he was pushing a mop instead of shifting gears. His jaw tightened. He looked away, focusing on the scuff marks on the rubber floor tiles. "I took out a title loan against the rig to cover my wife's medical bills," he explained. "The interest rate was structured to drown me. I missed 2 payments. The lending company seized the truck. They auction those rigs off to their own subsidiaries for pennies and keep you on the hook for the deficit. It is a rigged game. Once they hold your debt, they hold your throat." I stared at Tomas. I memorized his face. I memorized the bitter resignation in his voice. The concept of predatory lending, of weaponized debt, planted a seed in my mind that would later grow into a guillotine. I thanked him for the routing advice. I adjusted the Shreveport manifest exactly as he suggested. It saved the independent driver $300 in fuel. I spent the rest of those 63 nights operating from the driver's seat of the Corolla. The dashboard clock would read midnight, then 1 in the morning, then 2. My laptop battery constantly hovered near the red warning indicator. I tapped into the gym's free wireless internet signal, filtering through endless streams of supply chain data. My parents and Marcus believed my ambition was a pipe dream because they equated logistics with owning a fleet of physical trucks. They thought you needed millions of dollars in hard assets to move cargo. They were dinosaurs operating on outdated assumptions. I did not buy physical trucks. I built a digital freight brokerage. In the agricultural sector, there is a constant crisis of orphaned shipments. A massive corporate farming operation will have pallets of fertilizer or harvested soybeans sitting on a loading dock, abandoned because a primary carrier dropped the contract or a truck broke down. Those farmers need the cargo moved immediately. I became the invisible middleman. I used my day job contacts to identify the orphaned freight. Then, using my laptop in the dark parking lot, I matched that stranded cargo with independent drivers who were looking for extra routes. I handled the insurance verification, the route mapping, and the payment processing. I took a 15% broker fee off the top of every single manifest. I poured every cent of commission into formalizing my LLC, Apex Freight. I paid the state licensing fees. I bought a commercial routing software subscription. I secured premium broker liability insurance. My physical health deteriorated. My spine radiated with a dull, constant ache. My diet of peanut butter and gym vending machine protein bars left me gaunt. The dark circles under my eyes required layers of expensive concealer before I walked into my corporate office each morning. But the bank account tied to Apex Freight was doing the opposite. It swelled. The balance climbed to $5,000, then $12,000, then $28,000. By the end of the second month, I possessed enough liquid capital to lease a luxury apartment in downtown Baton Rouge. I could have slept in a real bed. I could have bought hot meals. I refused. Comfort is the enemy of momentum. If I signed a lease, I would drain the operational liquidity of Apex Freight. I needed the capital to secure a bond, which would allow me to bid on massive, multi-year corporate shipping contracts. I chose the pain of the steering wheel against my ribs because it fueled my focus. I was not just surviving my family's betrayal, I was coding the infrastructure of an empire, one manifest at a time. However, success creates noise. The logistics industry in Louisiana is a tight circle. Word was beginning to spread about a highly efficient new brokerage firm called Apex Freight. I knew my mother's social network. I knew Marcus's connections in the regional banking sector. If they heard rumors of my sudden rise, if they realized I was not broken and bleeding in the gutter where they left me, they would pivot. They would use their influence to interfere with my licensing. They would call in favors to blackball me from vendor lists. They needed to believe I was desperate. They needed to believe I was flailing, obsessed with the past, and mourning the loss of their approval. I sat in my car on the 63rd night, listening to the rain hammer against the metal roof. I looked at the $14,000 deficit Marcus had created in my personal checking account. I did not need the money anymore. Apex Freight was generating that amount every few days. But Marcus did not know that. My parents did not know that. I realized I needed a diversion. I needed to hand them a shiny object to mock, a petty grievance to occupy their time while I operated in the shadows. I needed to bleed them of their attention. I opened a new browser tab. I navigated to the East Baton Rouge Parish Clerk of Court website. I downloaded the filing paperwork for a small claims lawsuit. The heavy glass doors of the East Baton Rouge Parish Courthouse squeak on their hinges. I walk into the air-conditioned lobby wearing my standard corporate uniform, a charcoal blazer, a crisp white blouse, and practical heels. I approach the civil filings window. The clerk is a woman with tired eyes and a name tag resting crooked on her cardigan. I slide 3 copies of a small claims petition under the protective glass partition. The document names Marcus as the sole defendant. The grievance lists the theft of $14,000 from a joint escrow account. I sign the forms as a pro se litigant, meaning I am representing myself without formal legal counsel. I pay the filing fee with a debit card. The clerk brings a heavy rubber stamp down onto the top page. The thud echoes in the quiet corridor. Filing this lawsuit is a tactical decision. I understand the banking loophole Marcus exploited. I understand the judge will look at the joint account signatures and rule in his favor based on the rigid letter of the law. I am walking into a trap I cannot win. That is exactly the point. My parents and Marcus share a specific psychological flaw. They are arrogant, and they require an audience for their victories. If I simply disappeared, if I went silent and stopped fighting, they would become suspicious. My father would start asking his country club contacts if anyone had heard from me. My mother would probe my sister for details. They would hunt for information to ensure I was adequately punished. I need them looking the wrong way. I need to feed their egos a cheap, digestible victory to keep them distracted while I secure the foundation of Apex Freight. The bait works faster than I anticipate. 3 days after the process server hands Marcus the summons at his bank office, my burner phone vibrates. It is a text message from my younger sister, Olivia. Olivia occupies a different reality within the Dixon family structure. She is the golden child, insulated by compliance. She plans her upcoming country club wedding while remaining willfully blind to the mechanics of my exile. Her message is brief. Marcus showed Dad the lawsuit. They are laughing about it. Mom told everyone at the tennis luncheon that you are having a breakdown over pennies. They hired Gerald Vance to shut you down. Gerald Vance operates out of a strip mall office next to a dry cleaner on Florida Boulevard. He is the kind of attorney who handles minor traffic citations and petty neighbor disputes. My parents hiring him is a calculated insult. They are signaling that my legal threat is so insignificant, they will not even waste their premium corporate lawyers on the defense. A week later, a thick envelope arrives at my newly rented post office box. It contains a response drafted by Gerald. The paper is cheap. The legal jargon is bloated, designed to intimidate a civilian. Gerald files a motion for summary dismissal, citing the mutual signatory status of the escrow account. He includes a smug cover letter offering a settlement. If I drop the case immediately, Marcus will graciously agree not to countersue me for his legal fees. They expect me to panic. They expect me to spend my evenings drafting desperate, emotional responses to the clerk of court. They picture me sweating in the Louisiana heat, paralyzed by the threat of counter-litigation. Instead, I pack my 2 suitcases into the trunk of the Corolla and drive to Choctaw Drive. The industrial sector smells of diesel exhaust and wet concrete. I park in front of a sprawling corrugated metal warehouse. The landlord is a retired mechanic who cares only about cashier checks and quiet tenants. I hand him the first and last month rent. He hands me a silver key. My new headquarters is a 200-square-foot office located directly above the functioning warehouse floor. It has 0 windows. The walls are paneled in cheap faux wood from the 1970s. The floorboards vibrate every time a forklift idles below. The overhead fluorescent bulb hums with a persistent, insect-like buzz. I carry a newly purchased air mattress up the wooden stairs. I inflate it in the corner. I set my laptop on a scarred metal desk left behind by the previous tenant. I am no longer sleeping in a sedan, but the luxury is minimal. It does not matter. The corrugated metal walls are a fortress. While Gerald Vance files procedural delays in the municipal court, I open my laptop and join a video conference with the executive board of a regional agricultural cooperative. The cooperative represents 50 independent farmers across the Gulf Coast. Their incumbent freight carrier recently filed for bankruptcy, leaving hundreds of tons of winter fertilizer stranded on loading docks. The farmers are bleeding revenue by the hour. They need a logistics solution, and they need it executed with surgical precision. I do not wear a blazer for the video call. I wear a plain black sweater. I sit up straight in the windowless room. The fluorescent light casts harsh shadows across my face. I project the data models I built during those 63 nights in the Planet Fitness parking lot. I show them my proprietary routing network. I demonstrate how Apex Freight can circumvent the standard way station bottlenecks by utilizing independent owner-operators. The board members are quiet. They are hardened men who read crop yields and weather patterns. They do not care about country club lineages. They care about margins. The chairman leans into his webcam. Your delivery timeline is aggressive, Ms. Dixon. Do you have the operational liquidity to cover the bond required for a contract this size? I look directly into the camera lens. I have the capital, secured and ready for immediate transfer. I can say this because I did not spend my money on a luxury apartment lease. I did not buy hot meals. I hoarded every broker fee I earned from the orphaned shipments. My business account holds the exact sum required to underwrite the bond. The negotiations take 48 hours. I sleep on the air mattress in 4-hour increments. The warehouse floor below me grinds on, a symphony of industrial labor. During this time, Gerald Vance sends another letter to my P.O. box. The judge has granted a 30-day continuance on the small claims hearing. My parents are undoubtedly celebrating this minor delay over expensive wine, congratulating Marcus on his strategic brilliance. On a Thursday morning, the printer on my scarred metal desk whirs to life. The machine spits out a 30-page document. It is the finalized contract from the agricultural cooperative. I pick up the warm paper. I turn to the final page. The compensation structure is laid out in stark, undeniable arithmetic. Over the next 24 months, Apex Freight will manage the exclusive distribution of their supply chain. The gross payout is $1.2 million. I sign my name in blue ink. The stroke of the pen is silent. There is no audience. There are no crystal chandeliers. There is only the hum of the fluorescent bulb and the vibration of the floorboards. I slide the contract into a courier envelope to mail back to the board. I look at the small claims paperwork sitting on the edge of the desk. The contrast is sharp enough to draw blood. My family thinks they have me pinned in a corner, weeping over a stolen fraction of my savings. They are playing a parlor game, obsessed with the optics of crushing me in a municipal courtroom. They have no idea I am building an institution. The ink dries on a 7-figure deal. I have achieved the financial leverage necessary to begin dismantling their reality. But my parents are not satisfied with merely winning a legal dispute. Arrogance requires constant feeding. They want to ensure I am entirely eradicated from their social sphere. As the holidays approach, they decide my absence from their table is not enough. They need to turn my ghost into a cautionary tale. November in Baton Rouge brings a subtle shift in the humidity. The air turns crisp, and the sprawling live oak trees begin to shed their leaves across the cracked pavement of the industrial sector. It is a Tuesday evening when my burner phone vibrates against the scarred metal desk. The screen illuminates the dim, windowless office above the warehouse floor. The caller identification reads, Olivia. My younger sister operates as the family emissary. She relays the edicts of the Garden District without ever questioning the cruelty embedded within them. I open the message. The text is brief, cowardly, and precise. Mom thinks it is best you do not come to Thanksgiving dinner. Marcus is bringing his new girlfriend. It would just be awkward. Hope you are well. I stare at the glowing pixels. Marcus is bringing a new partner to my family holiday table. A woman he has known for a fraction of a year is sitting in the chair that belongs to me. My parents are carving a turkey with the man who drained my life savings, welcoming his new companion, while actively ensuring I remain an exile. I type a single word in reply. Understood. I press send. I set the phone face down. An exclusion from the dining room is a familiar sting, but it is not sufficient for my mother. She requires a narrative that absolves her of guilt. The following afternoon, an email arrives from a former corporate colleague. The subject line is blank. The body of the message contains 3 attached image files. I click the first attachment. It is a screenshot of a public post from my mother's social media profile. The image is a candid photograph of our family from 3 years ago, taken during a vacation in Aspen. My face is cropped out of the frame. The caption below the photograph is a masterclass in weaponized sympathy. The heartbreak of mental illness is a silent thief, she wrote. It steals the people we love and turns them into strangers. We are navigating a difficult season as a family. Elena has suffered a severe psychological break, choosing to abandon her career and sever ties with us. We ask for your prayers during her period of instability. We also want to publicly thank Marcus for his unwavering grace and loyalty. He has remained a steadfast son to us, even bearing the brunt of her erratic behavior. I read the words a second time. My pulse accelerates, thudding hard against my ribs. This is not a petty family rumor spread over tea. This is a targeted social assassination. Baton Rouge operates on a network of intertwined circles. The country club elite play golf with the banking executives, who sit on the boards of the regional agricultural cooperatives. The men I am scheduled to meet on Thanksgiving morning for the final binding signatures on my 7-figure freight contract travel in these same intersecting orbits. If the cooperative chairman reads this post, if he hears the whispered country club gossip that the CEO of Apex Freight is suffering a psychological collapse, he will terminate the agreement. A logistics broker manages millions of dollars in uninsured cargo. Stability is the only currency that matters in this industry. My mother is not just burning my personal reputation, she is aiming a torch directly at the foundation of my company. The instinct to defend oneself is primal. I feel an intense urge to draft a furious rebuttal, to post the bank statements proving Marcus committed fraud, to scream my sanity into the digital void. I move my cursor over the keyboard. I hover over the reply button. I stop. Arguing with a smear campaign validates the premise of the attacker. A response signals panic. A response is exactly what Diane Dixon wants. She wants a public meltdown to corroborate her fabricated tragedy. She wants me to act erratic so she can point at the screen and play the victim. I click the print icon instead. The machine on my desk spits out the 3 screenshots. I place the warm sheets of paper into a manila folder and slide it into my briefcase. I spend the rest of Wednesday night reviewing supply chain routes, calculating fuel index variables, and memorizing the dispatch schedules for the upcoming winter harvest. I sleep for 3 hours on the air mattress. Thursday arrives. It is Thanksgiving morning. While my parents are likely polishing silver flatware and arranging autumn centerpieces in the garden district, I am putting on a tailored charcoal suit in a corrugated metal warehouse. I drive the Corolla to a sterile, glass-fronted corporate building near the Mississippi River. The parking lot is deserted, save for the luxury vehicles of the executive board members who agreed to this holiday meeting due to the urgency of their stranded freight. I walk into the boardroom. The chairman and 3 regional directors are seated around a heavy mahogany table. Their expressions are unreadable. I know they run in the same social circles as my father. I do not know if they have seen the digital execution my mother orchestrated. I do not ask. I open my briefcase. I do not pull out the folder containing the screenshots. I pull out a stack of bound logistics projections. I slide the binders across the polished wood. I stand at the head of the table. I do not smile. I do not offer holiday pleasantries about turkey or family gatherings. For 45 minutes, I dismantle their current distribution bottlenecks. I speak in the hard, verifiable language of data. I show them how Apex Freight will reduce their transit delays by 22%. I outline the contingency protocols for severe weather disruptions. I project an air of bulletproof competence. I am a machine fueled by metrics and execution. The chairman reviews the final page of my proposal. He looks up. He studies my face, perhaps searching for the erratic behavior rumored in the country club lounges. He finds nothing but cold, unblinking focus. He reaches into his jacket, retrieves a fountain pen, and signs the master agreement. He pushes the document back to me. Your numbers are undeniable, Ms. Dixon. We look forward to a profitable partnership. I shake his hand. I walk out of the glass building holding a signed contract worth over $1 million. The crisp autumn air hits my face as the sliding doors close behind me. I sit in the driver's seat of my sedan. The smear campaign did not ruin me. The data shielded me. But the victory hollows out a space in my chest. My mother fabricated a mental health crisis to justify her own cruelty. She weaponized the language of trauma to protect her social standing. She demonstrated a willingness to burn her eldest daughter's name to ash just to keep her own hands looking clean. She painted me as insane so she would not have to explain why she funded a house for the man who stole from me. The gloves are no longer simply off. The rules of engagement have fundamentally changed. They assume I am a casualty of their narrative. They believe I am hiding in shame, crippled by their rejection. They do not know I now possess the financial ammunition to rewrite the entire story. And the very next day, a single piece of furniture will show me exactly where to aim that weapon. The Friday following Thanksgiving is known in the corporate sector as a dead day. Offices are empty, phones ring without answer, and the rhythm of commerce stalls. But banking infrastructure operates on an automated schedule. At 9 in the morning, my banking application chimes. A notification flashes across the screen of my phone, illuminating the dim confines of my warehouse office. Incoming wire transfer. Authorized. Available balance, $1,285,000. I stare at the digits. The comma separating the numbers is a profound demarcation. I am 31 years old. 7 months ago, I had $112 and an eviction notice. Today, the initial payout from the agricultural cooperative has cleared. On paper, evaluating the operational liquidity and projected revenue of Apex Freight, I am officially a millionaire. The achievement feels surreal, suspended in the quiet hum of the fluorescent light above my desk. I should feel triumphant. I should open a bottle of expensive champagne. Instead, an undeniable urge tugs at me. I want to see the physical manifestation of what I lost to gain this empire. I want to look at the property my parents chose over their daughter. I grab my keys, walk down the wooden stairs, and climb into the Corolla. I navigate away from the industrial gray of Choctaw Drive and turn toward Spanish Town. Spanish Town is the oldest neighborhood in Baton Rouge. It is a labyrinth of narrow streets, towering oak trees dripping with Spanish moss, and restored historic homes. The properties here exude old wealth and quiet prestige. This is the zip code my parents desperately wanted Marcus to occupy, securing his proximity to their country club peers. I turn onto a tree-lined avenue. I slow the sedan to a crawl. The house Marcus purchased sits halfway down the block. It is a stunning, single-story Greek Revival cottage painted pale yellow with dark green shutters. The porch wraps around the front, adorned with hanging ferns. The driveway is paved with historic brick. The sun has set, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. The large front windows of the cottage are illuminated from within, pouring golden light onto the manicured lawn. The curtains are drawn back. I park the car across the street, idling the engine near the curb. I look through the glass panes of the front room. The interior design is immaculate, arranged with the precision of a high-end catalog. And then my eyes focus on the center of the dining room. My breath catches in my throat. The air in the car suddenly feels thin and metallic. Sitting directly beneath a modern brass chandelier is a massive dark wood table. The legs are intricately carved in a claw and ball design. The wood gleams with a deep reddish-brown patina. Surrounding the table are 8 matching chairs, upholstered in pale cream fabric. It is my grandmother's antique mahogany dining set. My grandmother Eleanor passed away 4 years ago. She was a stern, brilliant woman who taught me how to balance a checkbook before I was allowed to drive. Her will was meticulous. It contained a specific addendum, drafted and notarized by a local estate attorney. The addendum explicitly bequeathed the mahogany dining set to her eldest granddaughter, Elena Dixon. When she died, I was living in a small studio apartment. The dining set was far too large for the space. My mother offered to store the heirlooms in the climate-controlled basement of the Garden District house until I purchased a property large enough to accommodate them. I agreed, trusting the bloodline. I trusted my mother to safeguard the tangible memory of the woman who shaped my mind. Instead, she moved my inheritance into the home of the man who evicted me. They did not just buy him a house. They furnished his dining room with the legacy of my ancestors. They gifted a stranger the physical artifacts of my history to solidify his status in their social circle. The table where I sat at age 10, learning compound interest from a matriarch who built her own wealth, is now the centerpiece for Marcus to host cocktail parties with the men who stole my seed capital. The betrayal shatters the boundaries of mere financial theft. Money is fluid. It can be drained and earned again. But this is a surgical erasure of my lineage. My parents are actively replacing me, outfitting my substitute with the very items designated as my birthright. They are pretending I never existed. I grip the steering wheel. The leather is cold beneath my palms. I squeeze until the knuckles of my hands turn stark white, until a sharp cramp shoots up my forearms. The quiet victory of the 7-figure bank balance dissolves, eclipsed by a cold, searing clarity. Surviving is a defensive posture. Surviving means you let the enemy dictate the terms of engagement while you scramble to patch the wounds they inflict. I am done patching wounds. The minor grievance of the small claims lawsuit is insufficient. A petty legal squabble over $14,000 is a distraction meant for amateurs. I pull my phone from the center console. I dial the direct line for Mason Wheeler. Mason is the senior corporate attorney I retained 3 months ago when Apex Freight began scaling rapidly. He answers on the second ring. "Elena," he says, the sound of a television playing softly in the background. "It is a holiday weekend. Did a shipment stall at the port?" "No shipment stalled, Mason," I reply. My voice is steady, stripped of all emotion. I need to pivot our strategy regarding the Dixon family. I hear him mute the television. "Okay, I assume the small claims delay tactic is losing its appeal?" I look through the windshield at the antique mahogany table gleaming under the chandelier. "I do not just want my $14,000 back," I tell him. "I want the board they are playing on." I hear a chair creak as Mason sits up. "Specify the directive, Elena." "I need you to contact Sarah. She is the forensic accountant we use for the vendor audits. I want her to pivot immediately. I want a comprehensive financial autopsy on Richard and Diane Dixon. Pull every public record. Pull the title history on the Garden District house. Track the lending institution that underwrote the Spanish Town property. Scrutinize their tax filings, their credit utilization, and their corporate dividend payouts. Leave 0 stones unturned." There is a long pause on the line. Mason understands the gravity of the request. A forensic audit of that magnitude is invasive. It is the kind of intelligence gathering used before a hostile corporate takeover. "You realize this kind of deep dive will require significant capital," he says. "It is not cheap to trace that level of private wealth." "Wire whatever funds Sarah requires from the Apex primary account," I answer. "I have the liquidity. If my parents wish to play real estate moguls, I need to understand the exact architecture of their portfolio. Find out who holds their paper. Find out who holds Marcus's paper." "Understood," Mason says. The line clicks dead. I lower the phone. I stare at the yellow historic cottage for one final minute. The golden light spilling onto the brick driveway looks warm and inviting. It is a beautiful facade, built on stolen funds and stolen artifacts. My parents believe they are untouchable, insulated by their country club memberships and the heavy gates of the Garden District. They assume I am a broken daughter, exiled to the industrial outskirts, weeping over their rejection. They have no concept of the predator they have created. I shift the sedan into drive. I pull away from the curb, leaving the historic district behind. The hunt has officially begun. And the first piece of intelligence Sarah uncovers will hand me a weapon more devastating than I could have ever calculated. The following Tuesday morning arrives with a heavy, gray, overcast sky. I am sitting at my desk in the warehouse office. The air mattress is gone, replaced by a modest leather sofa, but the corrugated metal walls remain. The hum of the industrial floor below provides a steady, rhythmic vibration under my boots. I am reviewing a fuel surcharge report when the heavy steel door creaks open. Sarah walks into the room. She is a former government auditor who spent a decade unspooling hidden assets for the Internal Revenue Service before moving to the private sector. She possesses a meticulous, clinical mind. She wears wire-rimmed glasses and carries a scarred leather tote bag that looks like it has survived a war. She does not offer a polite morning greeting. She walks directly to my desk and drops a thick, expandable folder onto the metal surface. The heavy thud rattles my coffee cup. "Look at the title history for the Spanish Town property," Sarah says. She pulls up a chair, unclasps the folder, and slides a stack of highlighted documents toward me. I look at the top page. It is the deed of trust for Marcus's new historic cottage. I expect to see the logo of a premier national bank. Marcus is an account manager at a prominent downtown branch. He wears custom suits and plays golf with regional vice presidents. He projects the image of flawless financial health. The logo on the deed belongs to Crescent City Private Lending. I frown, tracing the name with my index finger. Crescent City is a hard money lender. They operate in the shadow banking sector. They issue high-interest, predatory loans to individuals who cannot qualify for traditional mortgages. I look up at Sarah. Why would Marcus utilize a shadow lender? He works in commercial banking. He should qualify for a prime interest rate. Sarah taps the second page. His credit profile is a disaster, Elena. He is carrying a mountain of unsecured consumer debt, high-limit credit cards, a luxury vehicle lease he frequently pays late, and personal loans. His debt-to-income ratio disqualified him from traditional financing months ago. He lives a very expensive illusion. The information shifts the ground beneath me. The man who lectured me about my risky entrepreneurial ambitions, the man who demanded stability, is effectively bankrupt. But the revelations in the folder are only beginning. Sarah pulls a third document from the stack. The $90,000 down payment, she continues, her tone dropping into a forensic cadence. You saw the wire transfer originate from your father's primary checking account. You assumed your parents possessed that level of liquid cash. They do not. She slides a parish property record across the desk. It is a lien filing against the Garden District house. The date stamp is 4 days before my eviction. Your parents took out a home equity line of credit, Sarah explains. The terms are brutal. An adjustable interest rate that balloons after 12 months. They pulled the equity out of their primary residence, deposited it into their checking account, and wired it directly to Crescent City Private Lending to secure Marcus's mortgage. I stare at the signatures of Richard and Diane Dixon on the lien document. A cold knot tightens in my stomach. The Garden District house is my mother's crown jewel. It is the physical anchor of her social identity. They cross-collateralize their own home, I say, speaking the reality aloud to ensure I understand the mechanics. Correct, Sarah nods. They tied their own roof to the financial performance of a man who cannot even manage a credit card. If Marcus defaults on that Spanish Town mortgage, the shadow lender has a direct claim against your parents' house. The logic defies everything my father ever taught me about asset protection. It is a catastrophic risk. I lean back in my chair, staring at the fluorescent light reflecting off the glossy paper. Why would a supposedly savvy retired executive leverage his own home to buy real estate for an ex-boyfriend? It transcends mere favoritism. It borders on financial suicide. Sarah does not answer immediately. She reaches into the very back of the expandable folder. She pulls out a single sheet of paper enclosed in a plastic sleeve. Shadow lenders are subject to strict anti-money laundering regulations, Sarah says. When a down payment originates from a third party, the underwriter requires a sworn gift letter and a paper trail proving the nature of the transaction. A careless loan officer at Crescent City uploaded the entire unredacted exhibit packet to the parish clerk database. She places the plastic sleeve on top of the pile. This was attached as proof of the funds, she says quietly. I look down. It is a printed email chain. The sender is my father, Richard Dixon. The recipient is Marcus. The timestamp is 3 weeks before the breakup. I read the text. The words are typed in a sterile, corporate font, but the meaning is a sharp blade. Marcus, the email begins, Diane and I have reviewed your request regarding the Spanish Town property. We are willing to authorize the $90,000 equity draw to serve as your down payment. However, this transfer is strictly contingent upon the immediate termination of your shared lease on Perkins Road and the dissolution of any pending business entanglements with Elena. Her erratic career choices are becoming a liability to our standing. We need you separated from her logistics venture before it embarrasses the family further. Once she is removed from the premises, the wire will be released. I stop breathing. The industrial hum of the warehouse floor fades into a ringing silence. This was never about a breakup. This was never about Marcus deciding we had incompatible trajectories. It was a transaction. My parents paid him off. They viewed my ambition, my desire to build a company with dirt under its fingernails, as a threat to their pristine country club image. They were terrified I would fail publicly and tarnish the Dixon name. To prevent that embarrassment, they orchestrated my ruin. They offered Marcus a bribe. They bought him a house in a historic district on the explicit condition that he evict me and drain my seed capital. They threw me onto the street to protect their social calendar. I look at the date on the email again. They sat at Sunday dinners with me. They asked me how my week was going. They smiled over glasses of Merlot, knowing they had already signed the paperwork that would leave me sleeping in a Toyota Corolla. Sarah sits silently, allowing me the time to process the sheer scale of the betrayal. I look back at the lien documents. A new truth emerges from the paperwork, rising through the grief like a predator breaking the surface of the water. My parents are not wealthy benefactors pulling strings from a fortress of unlimited gold. They are broke. They are cash poor and drowning in debt. They are maintaining a facade of wealth on credit, desperate to keep up appearances. And in their desperation to control my narrative, they tethered their survival to a man who is actively sinking. If Marcus misses his exorbitant mortgage payments, the house of cards collapses. The power dynamic in the room shifts. I do not feel the sting of a rejected daughter anymore. I feel the cold, calculating pulse of a chief executive officer. My parents did not just orchestrate my eviction. They handed me the exact blueprint of their own vulnerability. I close the folder. The paper trail is a map, and X marks the spot where the Garden District meets Spanish Town. Thank you, Sarah, I say. My voice is steady, devoid of a single tremor. Bill your invoice to the Apex primary account. Sarah nods, recognizing the shift in my posture. She stands, picks up her empty tote bag, and walks out of the office. The heavy steel door shuts behind her, leaving me alone with the evidence. I slide my phone across the desk. I unlock the screen and dial my corporate attorney. Mason answers on the first ring. Elena, what did the forensic audit find? I trace the logo of Crescent City Private Lending on the deed of trust. I found the weak point in the armor, Mason. Marcus is financed through a shadow lender. My parents are leveraged as his collateral. I hear the scratch of a pen on the other end of the line as Mason takes notes. What is the directive? I need you to set up a blind trust immediately, I tell him. Structure it as a limited liability holding company. Use a registered agent in Delaware to mask the ownership. Name the entity Vanguard Holdings. Done, Mason says. What is Vanguard Holdings going to do? I look at the email where my father priced my exile at $90,000. Vanguard Holdings is going to approach Crescent City Private Lending, I reply. We are going to make a premium cash offer to purchase their distressed debt portfolio in the Spanish Town zip code. I want to buy the paper on Marcus's house. And I want the lien on the Garden District property included in the transfer. There is a brief silence on the line as the gravity of the legal maneuver settles between us. You understand what this means, Elena, Mason says. If Vanguard holds the debt, you become their sole creditor. You become the bank. I stare at the corrugated metal wall of my office. I think about the damp heat of the gym parking lot. I think about my grandmother's mahogany table sitting under a brass chandelier. I know exactly what it means, I say. Draft the acquisition papers. I end the call. The pieces are moving into position. My family believes they are untouchable. They have no idea that the daughter they sold out is about to buy the ground they are standing on. The logistics of a hostile financial takeover require extreme patience. The acquisition of debt is not a rapid transaction. It involves lawyers negotiating across conference tables, risk assessments, and the slow transfer of legal authority. For exactly 14 days, I operate in a state of suspended animation. I wake up in my new downtown apartment. I brew dark roast coffee in a quiet kitchen. I run 3 miles along the levee of the Mississippi River, watching the heavy cargo barges push against the current. I go to the Choctaw Drive warehouse. I dispatch freight, negotiate fuel surcharges, and optimize supply chain routes. I perform the mundane tasks of a corporate executive while knowing that a legal mechanism is quietly assembling itself in the background, designed to crush the people who share my bloodline. On the morning of the 15th day, a courier arrives at the warehouse office. He hands me a sealed manila envelope. The heavy paper is identical to the one I found resting on the granite counter of my former apartment. I slit the seal with a metal letter opener. I slide the documents onto my scarred desk. The letterhead belongs to a Delaware registered agent. The entity is Vanguard Holdings, LLC. The attached schedule outlines the finalized acquisition of a distressed debt portfolio previously held by Crescent City Private Lending. I scan the line items. Asset 1, a historic cottage located in the Spanish Town district. Primary borrower, Marcus. Asset 2, a home equity line of credit secured by a colonial property in the Garden District. Co-signers, Richard and Diane Dixon. The transaction is complete. $800,000 of capital transferred from the Apex Freight corporate reserves to secure the paper. I hold the deed to the house where my grandmother's mahogany table currently sits. I hold the lien on the pristine colonial home where my mother hosts her garden club luncheons. Without my family or my ex-boyfriend possessing a single shred of awareness, I have become their sole creditor. I am the bank. The tension of holding this kind of power is exquisite. It is a vibrating kinetic energy that sits just beneath the surface of my skin. I could instruct Mason to accelerate the default notices today. I could trigger the legal avalanche and bury them before they finish their morning coffee. But a sudden execution is too merciful. They did not destroy my life in an afternoon. They orchestrated a slow, methodical exile. They deserve to experience the grinding friction of their own financial incompetence before the final blow is delivered. I place the acquisition documents back into the manila folder. I slide the folder into my leather briefcase. I carry their financial lives with me, a silent passenger accompanying every business meeting, every lunch, every phone call. I turn my attention back to the operational growth of Apex Freight. I have a company to build and a debt to repay to the man who ensured I survived the Essen Lane parking lot. I drive the Corolla to the Planet Fitness at 2 in the afternoon. It is an unusual hour for me to visit the gym. The parking lot is mostly empty. I walk through the glass doors. Tomas is buffing the rubber floor mats near the free weights section. He looks up, surprised to see me wearing a tailored suit instead of my wrinkled corporate uniform. I approach him. He shuts off the buffer machine. The sudden silence in the cavernous gym highlights the gravity of the moment. "Elena," he says, leaning against the handle of the machine, "you look different. The dark circles under your eyes are gone." "I found a new routing strategy, Tomas," I reply. "The deadhead miles are zeroed out." He nods, a slow smile forming on his weathered face. "Good. The road rewards the ones who figure out the map." I reach into my jacket pocket. I pull out a sleek black business card. The Apex Freight logo is embossed in silver foil. I hand the card to him. I need a fleet manager, I tell him. I am expanding the brokerage. We are acquiring our first 10 physical rigs next month to handle a dedicated agricultural surplus contract. I need someone who knows every weigh station, every loading dock, and every maintenance trap between Texas and the Florida Panhandle. Tomas stares at the card. He reads the title printed below my name, Chief Executive Officer. He looks back at me, his eyes narrowing as he processes the reality of the woman he allowed to sleep near the dumpsters. You built this in the front seat of a sedan, he states. It is not a question. It is an acknowledgement of a shared grit. With the help of a gym microwave and a man who left the security door propped open, I answer. I quote him a starting salary that breaks the six-figure mark. It includes full health benefits and a performance bonus structure. It is compensation designed to pull a man out of predatory debt and restore his dignity. Tomas slowly takes the card from my hand. He traces the silver foil with his calloused thumb. I require a corner office with a window, he says, his voice thick with a sudden, overwhelming emotion. You have the corner office overlooking the loading bays, I reply. Start on Monday. I leave the gym. The satisfaction of hiring Tomas is profound. It is a constructive use of power. It is the antithesis of the destruction my parents wield. They utilize capital to sever relationships and punish ambition. I utilize capital to build infrastructure and reward loyalty. However, the destructive phase of this operation cannot remain dormant forever. The trap I constructed requires the target to step onto the pressure plate. The catalyst arrives in early January. The transition from Crescent City Private Lending to Vanguard Holdings includes a structural adjustment to the loan servicing protocols. The high interest rates tied to Marcus's mortgage are no longer mitigated by grace periods or flexible leniency. Under the strict enforcement guidelines initiated by Vanguard, the compounding late fees are aggressive. The debt is designed to suffocate a borrower who lacks liquid capital. Marcus, as Sarah predicted, lacks liquid capital. The first red flag appears on the Vanguard servicing dashboard. Marcus misses his January mortgage payment. The automated system generates a warning notice. 5 days later, a late fee is applied. 15 days later, the default protocol initiates a formal warning letter, mailed directly to the Spanish Town address. I sit at my desk, monitoring the digital ledger. I can picture Marcus opening the mail. I can envision the panic tightening his chest as he reads the sterile, threatening language of a faceless corporate entity demanding an exorbitant sum of money. He cannot ask my parents for another bailout. He knows their liquidity is tied up in the Garden District equity line, which is now also controlled by Vanguard. He is cornered. He must generate cash quickly, and he must do it quietly to prevent his banking colleagues from discovering his insolvency. The pressure is on. When a man is drowning, he begins to sell the heavy objects pulling him down. I wait. I know exactly what he possesses that holds value. I know exactly what he will try to liquidate first to appease the relentless demands of Vanguard Holdings. The irony is a tight, coiled spring, ready to snap. The next move is his, but the board belongs entirely to me. The digital dashboard for Vanguard Holdings is open on my secondary monitor. It is a sterile, gray interface that tracks the precise deterioration of a borrower's financial standing. A red indicator light blinks next to the file designated for the Spanish Town property. Marcus has officially missed his second consecutive mortgage payment. The aggressive compounding late fees, engineered into the original predatory loan contract he signed with Crescent City, are now accelerating the deficit. The grace periods are exhausted. The automated system has transitioned his status from delinquent to pre-foreclosure warning. I know the psychology of a man who builds his identity on country club optics. Marcus will not file for bankruptcy protection. Bankruptcy is a public record. It would trigger an internal audit at his commercial bank, likely resulting in termination. He will not ask my parents for a secondary loan. because admitting failure would fracture the illusion of stability they purchased him for. He is isolated. He is suffocating under the weight of an exorbitant interest rate. He must generate immediate liquidity to stall the faceless corporate entity breathing down his neck. I close the Vanguard dashboard. I open a new browser tab. I navigate to Facebook Marketplace. I have monitored his digital footprint using a secondary, anonymous profile for the past 3 weeks. The algorithm refreshes. A new listing appears at the top of the local Baton Rouge feed. The photograph is poorly lit, snapped with a smartphone camera. The caption reads, "Moving sale, antique mahogany dining set, heavy carved wood, 8 upholstered chairs, excellent condition, must pick up today, price firm, $400. I stare at the image. It is my grandmother Eleanor's table, the heirloom explicitly bequeathed to me, the physical artifact my parents used to furnish the house of my replacement. Marcus is attempting to liquidate my heritage for $400 to pay a late fee on a mortgage owned by my holding company. The audacity is breathtaking, but the geometry of the situation is perfect. I do not feel the crushing grief I experienced when I first saw the table through his front window in November. The emotion has crystallized into a cold, tactical satisfaction. I do not send a message from my personal account. Engaging him directly would shatter the illusion of my exile. It would alert him to my proximity. I pick up my desk phone and dial the dispatch floor. Thomas answers on the first ring. "Dispatch." "Tomas," I say, keeping my voice entirely professional. "I need a favor that requires discretion. I am sending you a residential address in Spanish Town. There is an antique dining set listed for sale by the occupant. I need you to deploy a third-party courier. Use an unmarked box truck. Do not send anyone wearing an Apex Freight uniform." Tomas pauses, the sound of diesel engines idling in the background. "You want me to buy a table, Elena." "I want you to retrieve stolen property," I correct him. "The seller is asking $400 cash. Give the courier $500. Tell them to hand over the cash, load the table, and bring it directly to my executive office. Instruct the courier to avoid any conversation with the seller." "Consider it done," Tomas says. The line disconnects. For 2 hours, I sit at my desk, reviewing routing manifests, while a silent retrieval operation executes across the city. I picture the scene unfolding. Marcus, likely sweating in a designer golf shirt, answering the door of his historic cottage. He is desperate, checking his watch, calculating how quickly he can deposit the cash to satisfy the Vanguard warning notice. He watches 2 men in unmarked work clothes haul the heavy mahogany wood out of his dining room. He takes the $500. He feels a brief, pathetic surge of relief, believing he has bought himself another 30 days of survival. At 3 p.m, the freight elevator groans as it ascends to the 2nd floor of my warehouse. The heavy steel doors part. 2 men carefully maneuver the massive dark wood table into my office, followed by the 8 cream-upholstered chairs. They set the heirloom down precisely in the center of the room, positioned over a woven rug I purchased yesterday. The men nod to me, hand over the digital receipt, and exit the office. The doors slide shut. I stand up from my desk. I walk over to the table. The wood gleams under the overhead lights. The carved claw and ball feet are exactly as I remember them. I run my hand along the polished surface. I can almost feel the faint indentation near the corner where I used to practice writing my signature when I was 10 years old. The heirloom is home. I sit in the chair at the head of the table. I look across the empty surface, visualizing the intricate layers of the trap I have constructed. The dramatic irony is a heavy, quiet weight in the room. Marcus just sold off the stolen pieces of my life to appease a holding company that I own. He surrendered my grandmother's legacy for a fraction of its value. Every single dollar he scrambled to find, every bill he handed to the bank teller this afternoon will be routed directly into the Vanguard corporate accounts. He is funding my empire with his desperation. He believes he survived a crisis. He believes he outsmarted a faceless lender. He does not realize he just handed the knife directly back to the executioner. The $400 cash infusion will cover the late penalties. It will not cover the principal payment due on the 1st of February. The math is relentless, and it is accelerating. The pressure he feels now is merely a tremor before the earthquake. Because Vanguard Holdings is not a traditional bank, we do not negotiate payment plans. We do not offer loan modifications. We execute the terms of the contract with lethal precision. The table sitting in my office is the final piece of collateral damage I intend to recover. The retrieval phase is complete. The destruction phase is scheduled to begin, and the first targets to feel the impact of the collapsing architecture will not be Marcus. It will be the two people who co-signed his delusion. The automated system is programmed to escalate notifications when a primary borrower remains delinquent. When Marcus inevitably misses the February payment, Vanguard will cease communicating exclusively with him. The legal demands will bypass Spanish Town and travel directly to the Garden District. My parents are currently insulated by their ignorance. They believe the situation is contained. They believe their $90,000 investment bought them a permanent solution. They are about to discover the true cost of their arrogance. I log back into the Vanguard dashboard. I adjust the communication parameters on the Spanish Town file. I check a box that authorizes immediate secondary notification protocols. The digital trap is armed. The wait is nearly over. The silence I have maintained for 10 months is about to be shattered by the sound of their own ringing telephones. The final week of February arrives with a bitter, unseasonable chill sweeping off the Gulf of Mexico. The sky over Baton Rouge is a flat, pale gray. Inside my executive office, the climate is meticulously controlled. I sit behind the antique mahogany dining table, which now serves as my primary desk. My laptop rests on the polished wood. The digital calendar indicates it is the 24th of the month. Today is the day the architecture of my family's delusion officially collapses. On the secondary monitor, the Vanguard Holdings servicing portal displays a stark crimson alert next to the Spanish Town file. Marcus has crossed the 90-day delinquency threshold. He exhausted his meager cash reserves, purchasing the 1-month delay. The shadow loan is now in terminal default. I watch the automated system execute the secondary liability protocol. The software generates a series of formal default warnings. Because Marcus failed to satisfy the debt, the legal burden shifts instantly to the co-signers. The algorithm drafts the certified letters, prints them at a secure off-site facility, and dispatches them via priority mail directly to the Garden District. I track the routing numbers through the Postal Service database. At 10:14 in the morning, a mail carrier walks up the familiar brick steps of the colonial house. He rings the chime. A signature is recorded on a green digital pad. I lean back in my leather chair. I visualize the scene unfolding miles away. My father, likely wearing his reading glasses, slices open the thick envelope. He unfolds the heavy paper. He expects a standard utility bill or a garden club newsletter. Instead, he reads the sterile, unforgiving legal terminology drafted by Vanguard Holdings. He realizes the high-interest debt he secured for his proxy son is accelerating. He discovers the faceless corporate entity holding the paper is initiating pre-foreclosure proceedings on his primary residence. 2 hours and 12 minutes later, the silence I have maintained for 10 months shatters. My personal cell phone rests on the mahogany wood. The screen illuminates. The device vibrates, emitting a low, urgent hum. The caller identification displays a single name, Diane Dixon. I stare at the glowing letters. I have not heard my mother speak since the morning she demanded the brass key to the front door. I do not reach for the device. I watch the incoming call timer count the seconds. The screen flashes, goes dark, and immediately lights up again. She is calling back to back. I let the phone ring a second time, then a third. On the fourth attempt, the system routes her to voicemail. A notification icon appears. I pick up the phone, tap the screen, and activate the speaker function. I set the device back onto the center of the table. I want her voice to fill the room. I want to hear the exact frequency of her desperation. The recording begins. There is a sharp intake of breath. Elena. Her voice trembles. The weaponized calm, the honey poured over gravel tone she perfected for country club luncheons, is entirely absent. The audio captures a brittle, frantic edge. We are in a difficult position. A real estate venture we entered into with Marcus has encountered a severe complication. The lending institution is threatening action against our property. She pauses. I hear the faint clinking of ice in a glass. She is drinking before noon. We heard from the Chamber of Commerce president that your little trucking business is turning a profit. We are glad you found your footing. But we are family, Elena. We need a bridge loan, $150,000, just for a few months until your father can liquidate some long-term bonds. Please call me back. We need you. The recording ends with a click. I sit in the quiet office. The sheer, unmitigated gall hangs in the air like smoke. I analyze the syntax of her plea. She categorizes the bribe they paid to orchestrate my eviction as a real estate venture. She minimizes my seven-figure logistics empire as a little trucking business. And then, cornered by her own catastrophic financial arrogance, she invokes the concept of family. She is asking the daughter she threw into a used Toyota Corolla to save the colonial mansion she kicked her out of. She assumes my success is a reservoir she can tap to patch the hull of her sinking ship. She expects me to absorb her trauma because I always absorbed her subtle cruelties in the past. 10 minutes later, the phone vibrates again. The caller identification reads, Richard Dixon. I let it go to voicemail. I press play. My father does not sound frantic. He sounds hollowed out. The arrogant, retired executive who lectured me about asset reallocation is gone. Elena, he says, his voice tight and strained. Your mother left you a message. I am following up. We are facing a critical liquidity crisis. Vanguard Holdings acquired the paper on the Spanish townhouse, and they are unresponsive to our legal counsel. We cannot find a human being to negotiate with. The compounding fees are staggering. Marcus is insolvent. If you have the capital, we will draw up a formal promissory note. We are out of options. Call me. He hangs up. I do not call them back. I do not draft a furious text message detailing the poetic justice of their ruin. I do not scream into the empty room. I stand up from the mahogany table. I walk over to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new executive suite. The view overlooks the sprawling Apex Freight dispatch yard. Below me, 40 heavy-duty freight trucks idle in neat geometric rows. The sunlight glints off the chrome exhaust stacks. The Apex logo is painted in sharp silver lettering on every cab. Mechanics inspect tire treads. Drivers carry clipboards toward the loading bays. The air outside is thick with the smell of diesel fuel and commerce. I built this machine in the dark. I fueled it with the humiliation they handed me. I look at the empire humming below my window, and I look back at the phone resting on the antique table. I search my chest for a trace of daughterly guilt. I search for a residual instinct to protect the people who raised me. I find nothing. The void they pushed me into 10 months ago is now a fortress. The emotional severing is final. My parents are trapped in a cage of their own design. They are fighting a ghost named Vanguard Holdings, begging for mercy from a corporate veil designed to remain deaf. They think their only hope is the daughter they discarded. They do not realize the savior they are calling and the executioner they are fleeing are the exact same person. The digital trap is officially locked. The automated warning phase has served its psychological purpose. My parents are awake. They are terrified. They are bleeding cash trying to retain retaining attorneys who cannot locate the true owner of the debt. It is time to escalate the conflict from digital threats to physical consequences. A certified letter delivered by a postal worker is a polite warning. An eviction notice handed over by a uniformed courier is a physical reality. I pick up the desk phone. I dial the dispatch center on the ground floor. Tomas answers. Dispatch. Tomas, I say, my gaze fixed on the heavy trucks rolling out of the yard. The grace period for the Spanish Town property is over. I need you to draft the formal 30-day notice to vacate. You want it sent certified mail, Tomas asks, the scratch of a pen echoing over the line. No, I reply. The stakes require a personal touch. Print the Vanguard Holdings mandate on heavy cardstock. Put on a clean Apex Freight uniform. I want you to drive the largest courier truck in our fleet to Marcus's historic cottage. Park it directly in his brick driveway. Walk up to the front door and hand the eviction notice to him directly. Tomas lets out a low, gravelly chuckle. A personal delivery. Understood. Once he signs for it, I continue, take a secondary truck, and deliver the foreclosure intent notice to the Garden District. Hand it to Richard Dixon. Let them see the logo on your uniform. Let them start trying to connect the dots. The line clicks as Tomas hangs up to prepare the routes. The final sequence is in motion. The paperwork is printed. The engines are running. The collision they never saw coming is driving straight to their front doors. March in southern Louisiana is heavy and damp. The azaleas are blooming in violent shades of pink, signaling the approaching spring. But the air inside my executive office is climate-controlled to a precise 68 degrees. It is the first of the month. The date circled on every financial calendar. The deadline for survival. I call Mason Wheeler, my corporate attorney, at 8 in the morning. He answers before the first ring completes. Mason, I say, staring at the flashing red delinquent status on the Vanguard portal. The Spanish Town file is closed. Execute the final default clauses. Do not offer a settlement. Do not offer a repayment extension. Trigger the physical eviction process. Understood, Elena, he replies. The scratch of his pen sharp against the silence. The paperwork is drafted. Shall I dispatch the standard parish process server? I lean forward, resting my elbows on the antique mahogany table. No. A parish process server is a bureaucrat. A process server operates with anonymity. The people we are evicting rely on anonymity to hide their failures. We are going to make this highly visible. I am using my own fleet. I hang up. I dial Tomas on the dispatch floor. The logistics are simple, but the execution requires precision. I instruct Tomas to select two of the largest, most obtrusive commercial vehicles in the Apex Freight fleet. I tell him to wear a freshly pressed company uniform. The crisp navy shirt with the silver Apex logo embroidered across the chest. At 10:30 in the morning, Tomas pulls a massive 24-foot box truck onto the narrow, brick-lined streets of the historic Spanish Town district. The roar of the heavy diesel engine echoes against the quaint, pastel-colored cottages. The air brakes hiss with a sharp, pneumatic screech as he parks the massive vehicle directly blocking the driveway of Marcus's pale yellow house. I track the GPS coordinates on my secondary monitor. I watch the blinking blue dot halt exactly at the target address. According to Tomas, Marcus opens the front door before the doorbell even chimes. He is wearing a tailored suit, likely preparing to leave for his banking job, where he spends his days assessing the financial risk of other people. He looks at the massive commercial truck blocking his exit. He looks at the uniformed driver climbing down from the cab. He assumes it is a delivery error. Tomas does not carry a clipboard. He carries a heavy, legal-sized envelope. He walks up the brick steps. He stops on the porch. He looks Marcus directly in the eye. He does not ask for a signature. He simply hands him the envelope. Marcus takes the heavy paper. Tomas turns around, climbs back into the diesel truck, and drives away. leaving a cloud of exhaust hanging over the manicured lawn. I know exactly what is inside that envelope. It is a formal 30-day notice to vacate the premises. It is stamped in red ink by Vanguard Holdings. The document cites the catastrophic failure to satisfy the terms of the mortgage. It outlines the immediate seizure of the asset. The house my parents bought to secure Marcus in their social orbit is officially gone. The first domino falls. 58 minutes later, the second blue dot on my GPS monitor stops moving. A secondary Apex courier truck, driven by a senior driver named Hayes, turns into the sweeping circular driveway of the Garden District Colonial. Hayes parks the heavy vehicle in front of the pristine white columns. He walks up the brick steps. My father answers the door. Richard Dixon, the man who priced my exile at $90,000, is handed an identical legal envelope. This document is a foreclosure intent notice. It details the acceleration of the home equity line of credit. Because Marcus defaulted on the primary loan, the collateralized debt tied to the Colonial Mansion is called due. The notice demands immediate payment in full, not a monthly installment. The entire principal sum, $800,000, due in 30 days, or the property is seized. I sit in my office, watching the GPS blips return to the warehouse yard. The physical deliveries are complete. The ghost they have been fighting just knocked on their front doors. The ensuing panic is a documented phenomenon. My cousin Madison, the family gossip, who inadvertently alerted me to the Thanksgiving smear campaign, texts me at 2 p.m. The message is a frantic stream of consciousness. Elena, you need to call Mom and Dad. It is a disaster. Dad is screaming at his lawyer on the phone. Someone is trying to take the house. Marcus is getting evicted. They are saying a company called Vanguard is liquidating them. Mom is hyperventilating in the kitchen. Call them. I read the text. I set the phone face down. I do not reply. I can picture the chaos unfolding in the pristine Colonial. My father, stripped of his arrogant executive posture, realizing the depth of the trap he walked into. My mother, gripping the granite island, watching the foundation of her social identity crack under the weight of a certified letter. The frantic scrambling begins. According to the intelligence Sarah gathers from her network of financial contacts, my father spends the next 48 hours calling every vice president at his former corporate bank. He attempts to restructure the home equity line. He begs for a massive, uncollateralized bridge loan to pay off the Vanguard debt. The bankers decline. They review his credit profile. They see a retired executive drowning in high-interest shadow loans tied to an insolvent proxy son. In the financial sector, loyalty ends where liability begins. The men my father played golf with for 20 years politely tell him they cannot authorize the risk. He is cut off from traditional capital. Desperation breeds paranoia. My parents realize Vanguard Holdings is not a normal lending institution. Normal banks answer their phones. Normal banks negotiate short sales or forbearance agreements. Vanguard operates like a machine, deaf to pleas and immune to negotiation. My father hires a private investigator. He authorizes a $10,000 retainer for a former federal agent turned corporate investigator located in New Orleans. The mandate is simple. Penetrate the corporate veil of Vanguard Holdings. Find the CEO. Find the human being holding the paper, so Richard Dixon can fly to their office and negotiate a settlement face-to-face. The investigator spends a week digging. He accesses state registry databases. He pulls incorporation documents. He traces routing numbers. But Mason Wheeler is a brilliant corporate attorney. He structured Vanguard Holdings utilizing a multi-tiered series of blind trusts registered in Delaware. The ownership matrix is a labyrinth of dead ends, legal blockades, and anonymous registered agents. The investigator hits a solid brick wall. He submits his final report to my father on a Friday afternoon. The document concludes that Vanguard Holdings is a ghost entity, likely a subsidiary of a massive foreign hedge fund liquidating distressed Gulf Coast real estate. There is no local office. There is no human executive to meet. The corporate structure is legally impenetrable. My parents are fighting an enemy they cannot see, cannot call, and cannot bribe. They are boxing a shadow. The psychological toll is severe. The Garden District house becomes a pressure cooker of compounding anxiety. Every time a delivery truck drives past their window, my mother flinches. Marcus stops attending the country club, terrified of facing questions about his sudden change in residence. The carefully curated facade they spent decades building is disintegrating in real time. And the most exquisite detail of this destruction is their fundamental assumption regarding my role in the narrative. They still believe I am the victim. They still believe I am the collateral damage of their strategic alliance with Marcus. They occasionally leave frantic voicemails on my phone, begging for the bridge loan from my little trucking business, assuming I am simply holding a grudge over a bad breakup. They are looking everywhere for the architect of their ruin, except right across the river. But the blast radius of a financial detonation is rarely contained to the primary targets. When a foundation crumbles, the adjacent structures fall with it. The debt I engineered to crush my parents and Marcus is about to intersect with the golden child of the Dixon family. The timing is a masterpiece of collateral damage, and it centers on a specific date marked in silver calligraphy on a stack of expensive wedding invitations. April in southern Louisiana smells like jasmine and wet earth. It is the peak of the spring social season. In the affluent enclaves of Baton Rouge, this month is dedicated to a very specific type of pageantry. It is the season of the country club wedding. My younger sister Olivia scheduled her ceremony for the second Saturday in May. Olivia is a case study in the psychology of the compliant child. Growing up, she observed the friction between my ambition and my parents' desire for control. She chose the path of least resistance. She adopted their opinions, mirrored their prejudices, and married into a family that met their exact socioeconomic requirements. Her reward for this lifelong performance was a $60,000 wedding funded entirely by Richard and Diane Dixon. The invitations were mailed in January. They featured thick cream cardstock, gold foil lettering, and a requested RSVP date of April 1st. But April 1st arrives under the shadow of a Vanguard Holdings foreclosure notice. The Baton Rouge Country Club operates on a rigid financial ledger. Their bylaws require the final balance for the ballroom, the catering staff, and the floral arrangements to be settled in full exactly 30 days prior to the event. The event coordinator places a routine phone call to my mother to process the final payment. My parents do not have the funds. The aggressive legal maneuvers initiated by my corporate attorney have paralyzed their fiscal reality. Their liquid cash is draining rapidly to pay a defense lawyer who cannot even locate the plaintiff. The equity in their colonial home is frozen by the default status of the secondary lien. The banks have slashed their credit limits. My mother attempts to leverage her social standing. She calls the club manager, a man she has known for 15 years. She asks for a discreet grace period. She promises the funds will clear by the end of the month. The manager declines. In the ecosystem of elite institutions, prestige is a fragile currency. It only holds value when backed by actual capital. Without the payment, the reservation is scrubbed from the master calendar. The ballroom is released to another couple. The wedding is canceled. At 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, my phone vibrates on the mahogany dining table in my office. A new voice memo appears on the screen. The sender is Olivia. I press play. I lean back in my chair and listen to the sound of my sister unraveling. She is weeping. The audio is jagged, filled with sharp intakes of breath. "Elena," she says, her voice thick with a venomous panic. "Mom told me what is happening. She said your logistics company is generating millions. She said you are flush with cash and you are just sitting there while my life falls apart. She pauses to blow her nose. The entitlement in her tone hardens. How can you do this? The club canceled my reservation. My florist is threatening to sue me for breach of contract. You have the money now. You could fix this with one wire transfer. Are you seriously going to ruin my wedding day over some petty grudge against Marcus? You need to call Mom and transfer the funds. You owe this to us. The recording stops. I sit in the quiet, climate-controlled air of my executive suite. I analyze the structural logic of her demands. The narrative inside the Garden District house has shifted. My parents finally accept that I am no longer a homeless casualty sleeping in a gym parking lot. The rumors of my corporate success have penetrated their bubble. However, instead of feeling remorse for my exile, they have recast me as a villain. Olivia does not acknowledge the reality that our parents stole my life savings to buy a house for a stranger. She categorizes my eviction as a petty grudge. She demands I write a $60,000 check to rescue the very people who left me with $112 in my checking account. In a toxic family system, the scapegoat is always expected to set themselves on fire to keep the golden child warm. When the scapegoat refuses to burn, they are branded a traitor. I do not feel a single tremor of guilt. I do not feel the urge to explain the mechanics of the Vanguard Holdings acquisition. Explaining the truth to people committed to their delusions is a waste of operational energy. I pick up my phone. I open the text message thread with my sister. I type 7 words. I use the exact phrasing my father used when I stood in his kitchen and begged him for my stolen business capital. You are an adult. Figure it out. I press send. I slide the phone into my desk drawer. I close the drawer. I return my focus to the regional shipping manifests. The consequences of that text message cascade through the Baton Rouge social circuit with lethal speed. Gossip travels faster than freight. The event coordinator at the country club complains to the catering manager about the sudden cancellation. The catering manager mentions the bounced payment to a bartender. By Friday evening, the story leaps from the service staff to the tennis committee. The Whisper Network ignites. The narrative is catastrophic for my mother. Richard and Diane Dixon defaulted on their own daughter's wedding. They are insolvent. They are putting up a facade. The social exile is immediate and unforgiving. The women who normally invite my mother to charity luncheons suddenly stop returning her calls. My father arrives for his standard Saturday morning golf tee time and discovers his regular foursome has already teed off without him. In this specific zip code, financial failure is a contagious disease. No one wants to stand too close to the infected. But the deepest casualty of the gossip mill is Olivia's relationship. Her fiancé is a junior partner at a prominent regional law firm. He comes from a family that values optics above all other metrics. He proposed to Olivia because the Dixon name carried a specific, polished weight in the community. When the whispers reach his law firm, the calculus of the marriage changes. Aligning himself with a family facing public foreclosure and whispered bankruptcy is a professional liability. According to the intelligence gathered by my cousin Madison, the fiancé visits the Garden District house on Sunday afternoon. He sits in the pristine living room. He does not offer a financial bailout. He suggests they pause the engagement. He tells Olivia they need to postpone the ceremony indefinitely until her family resolves their complicated fiscal liabilities. He leaves the ring, but he takes his distance. The Dixon family dynamic shatters. It is not my vengeance that breaks them. I did not plant a false story in the local newspaper. I did not call the country club and cancel the venue. I simply enforced the legal parameters of a contract they willingly signed. They are broken by math. They are destroyed by the inescapable arithmetic of living beyond their means to project an illusion of superiority. They spent decades treating capital as a weapon to control their children, and they are now bleeding out from a self-inflicted wound. The social death of my parents is complete, but the physical eviction remains on the calendar. The 30-day grace period mandated by the foreclosure intent notice is rapidly expiring. My parents can no longer hide behind drawn curtains. They must secure a new residence. They must purchase cardboard boxes and packing tape. They must walk through the spacious rooms of the colonial mansion and decide which pieces of their curated life will fit into a budget rental property. The physical reality of losing their crown jewel is setting in. The date of their departure approaches. I mark the day on my calendar. I do not plan to attend their moving day. I have a much more precise method prepared to signify the end of their era, involving a simple trip to a stationery store and a familiar piece of brass. The 15th of April arrives with a steady, unrelenting rain. In the broader financial sector, this date signifies tax deadlines and fiscal reckoning. Within the secure servers of Vanguard Holdings, it marks the execution of the final seizure protocol. At 9 in the morning, the digital phone on my desk lights up. Mason Wheeler is on the line. "The deed is recorded, Elena," he states. His voice carries the crisp professionalism of a corporate attorney delivering a successful verdict. The title transfer is complete. Vanguard Holdings is now the legal owner of the Garden District property. The Dixon family has officially vacated the premises. I open the servicing portal on my monitor. The status indicator next to my parents' former address has shifted from a blinking red warning to a solid terminal black. The classification reads, "Real estate owned." There is no grand celebration in my office. No champagne corks pop. I simply nod, thank Mason for his precise execution of the law, and disconnect the line. I do not drive across town to watch them load their belongings into a moving truck. I do not need to witness their humiliation from the driver's seat of my Porsche to feel the weight of the victory. The intelligence I receive from the periphery is more than sufficient. My cousin Madison, acting as a real-time chronicler of the family collapse, sends a series of text messages throughout the morning. The details paint a stark portrait of a dynasty reduced to rubble. Because their credit limits are frozen and their liquid cash is drained by feudal legal retainers, my parents cannot afford a premium relocation service. They hire a discount moving company. 2 men in an unwashed box truck arrive to pack 30 years of curated wealth. They cannot take everything. The sprawling colonial mansion possessed 5 bedrooms, a formal dining hall, and a sunroom. The destination they secured is a cramped 2-bedroom leased condo in a generic beige complex on the far outskirts of the city. The geometry of their new reality requires ruthless subtraction. Madison reports that an estate liquidator was called to the house over the weekend. Strangers walked across the pristine hardwood floors, haggling over my mother's crystal vases, inspecting the Persian rugs, and purchasing the heavy antique sideboards for a fraction of their insured value. My parents stood in the kitchen, watching their legacy get carried out the front door, piece by piece, sold to cover the deposit on a low-tier rental unit. The irony is a flawless, unbroken circle. 10 months ago, they authorized Marcus to sell my grandmother's mahogany table to appease his debt. Today, they are selling their own heirlooms just to afford a roof. Marcus, for his part, surrendered the keys to the Spanish Town cottage 3 days prior. The high-interest loan choked the last of his resources. The man who lectured me about stability, the man who evicted me because my logistics company was too risky, is now renting a 400-square-foot studio apartment situated directly above a noisy college bar near the university. His polished banking career is hanging by a frayed thread as the stress of his insolvency bleeds into his performance metrics. The board is cleared. The pieces they use to play their arrogant game are swept into the discard pile. At 10:30, I receive an encrypted email from Tomas. He is managing the physical security of the Vanguard acquisitions. Attached to the email is an invoice from a commercial locksmith. The heavy brass deadbolts on the Garden District house have been drilled out. The elegant, historic hardware is gone. In its place, the locksmith installed heavy-duty, industrial-grade steel cylinders. The property is secured, winterized, and staged for a future commercial flip. I look at the invoice. I read the confirmation of the hardware change. A specific thought solidifies in my mind. I stand up from my desk. I put on my suit jacket, retrieve my keys, and take the elevator down to the ground floor. The rain has stopped, leaving the Baton Rouge streets slick and steaming in the midday heat. I drive to Pratt Street, parking near a high-end stationery boutique. It is the kind of store my mother frequented when ordering invitations for her charity galas. I walk inside. The air smells of pressed paper and expensive binding glue. I bypass the colorful displays of greeting cards and approach the premium stock section. I select a single, heavy envelope. It is constructed of thick, cream-colored linen. The texture is rough and substantial. I walk to the register and pay for the single envelope with a $5 bill. I return to my car. I sit in the driver's seat, listening to the rhythmic ticking of the engine cooling. I open the center console. Sitting at the bottom of the velvet-lined storage compartment is a metal object. I reach in and pull it out. It is the heavy brass key. It is the exact key my mother demanded I unclip from my ring on that Tuesday morning in April. It is the metal instrument she asked for, while looking me in the eye, prioritizing the security of her garden club meeting over the survival of her own daughter. I hold the brass in my palm. It is cold. It carries the weight of 1,000 childhood memories, of unlocking that heavy oak door after school, of sneaking in late during my teenage years, of feeling safe. But it also carries the weight of my exile. It is the physical representation of the moment I ceased to be a daughter and became a liability. I slide the heavy brass key into the cream linen envelope. I do not take out a pen to write a letter. There is no need for a lengthy, dramatic explanation. I do not need to detail the pain of sleeping in a gym parking lot or the grueling hours spent building a logistics empire in a windowless warehouse. My parents do not deserve the intimacy of my anger. Silence is the most devastating frequency. I moisten the adhesive strip and seal the flap. I press my thumb along the edge, ensuring the closure is tight. I retrieve a black ink pen from the glove compartment. I write the address of their new, cramped condo on the front of the envelope in neat architectural print. I leave the return address section entirely blank. I start the car and drive to the nearest federal post office. I pull up to the blue collection box sitting on the curb. I roll down my window. I extend my arm holding the thick cream paper. I drop it into the slot. The envelope hits the bottom of the metal bin with a muted thud. It is the ultimate punctuation mark at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. My mother wanted the key. She valued it more than my presence. Now she will receive it back. But the poetry lies in the locksmith invoice currently sitting in my inbox. The brass key opens nothing. The deadbolts are drilled out. The colonial mansion belongs to a corporate holding company. She will open her mailbox at a budget apartment complex, tear open premium linen paper, and hold a piece of dead metal. You wanted the key? Keep it. The lock does not belong to you anymore. I roll up my window and merge back into the downtown traffic. The emotional severing is finalized. The debts are collected. The properties are seized. A lesser strategist would consider the war concluded. But I understand the specific pathology of the country club elite. My parents are currently hiding in a 2-bedroom condo, licking their wounds. They believe the worst is over. They believe they have hit the bottom of the canyon. They still retain one final asset that Vanguard Holdings could not seize through a foreclosure notice. They retain their membership at the Baton Rouge Country Club. Despite the humiliation of my sister's canceled wedding, Richard and Diane Dixon will attempt to salvage their social dignity. They will put on their finest remaining clothes this coming Sunday. They will drive their leased Lexus to the club for the weekly brunch service. They will walk into the dining room, hold their heads high, and pretend their downsizing was a voluntary choice to simplify their retirement. They will rely on the polite Southern fiction that nobody notices the blood on their shoes. They need the illusion of the country club to survive, which is exactly why the real estate division of Apex Freight spent the last 3 weeks quietly negotiating the purchase of a specific parcel of land. The target is a vast 10-acre commercial lot located directly across the 2-lane highway from the wrought iron entrance gates of the Baton Rouge Country Club. The deal closed yesterday. The zoning permits are approved. The eviction was a private agony. It happened behind closed doors, hidden from the eyes of their peers. But arrogance must be dismantled in the sunlight. I drive back to my executive office to approve the design proof for a temporary construction billboard. The canvas is 20 feet wide. The ink is being loaded into the industrial printers today. The installation crew is scheduled to erect the steel posts on Saturday night under the cover of darkness. When my parents pull up to those wrought iron gates on Sunday morning, seeking sanctuary in their final remaining illusion, they are going to face a monument to their own destruction. The Baton Rouge Country Club occupies a stretch of pristine acreage, insulated by a canopy of centuries-old live oaks and manicured lawns. The entrance is marked by tall wrought iron gates and heavy stone pillars. The board of directors curates this environment with an iron fist, ensuring the aesthetic remains silent, green, and exclusive. Directly across the 2-lane highway from those stone pillars lies a 10-acre parcel of undeveloped commercial land. For decades, the country club patrons treated this empty field as a visual buffer. They assumed no commercial developer would dare disrupt the quiet prestige of their enclave with an unsightly project. They underestimated the liquidity of a freight logistics firm. In early May, the real estate holding division of Apex Freight finalized the purchase of that exact 10-acre parcel. We bypassed the local planning commission bottlenecks by presenting a fully funded, debt-free infrastructure project. The zoning permits were approved and stamped by the parish clerk without a single public hearing. To truly dismantle the delusion my parents constructed, I cannot simply seize their colonial mansion. Taking their house removes their shelter, but it does not erase their arrogance. Arrogance survives in the spaces where people perform their status. The country club is the final stage where Richard and Diane Dixon can pretend they are still part of the elite. To neutralize that threat, I must alter the environment they fled to. A truck driver rest stop is the exact antithesis of country club prestige. It brings the rumble of heavy diesel engines, the hiss of pneumatic air brakes, the smell of exhaust, and the harsh glare of industrial floodlights directly to their sanctuary. It injects the blue-collar grit of the supply chain industry right into the visual horizon of the people who mocked it. I hire a private commercial contracting crew to execute the final maneuver. On Saturday night, under the cover of a moonless sky, the crew arrives at the empty lot across from the wrought iron gates. They drive heavy steel posts deep into the Louisiana soil. They unroll a thick, industrial-grade vinyl canvas measuring 20 feet across and 10 feet high. The material is stretched taut and fastened to the steel frame. The typography printed on the canvas is sharp, bold, and uncompromising. In heavy dark lettering, the sign reads, "Future home of Apex Logistics truck driver, rest stop." Directly below the main header, a secondary line of text clarifies the corporate architecture holding the deed, a subsidiary of Vanguard Holdings. Centered on the next line is the identity of the architect, CEO Elena Dixon. In the bottom right corner, printed in the format of a subtle corporate footnote, the canvas lists the recent real estate acquisitions finalized by the holding company. The text features one specific line item. It is the exact street address of the Garden District home my parents vacated 15 days ago. Sunday morning arrives with a bright, piercing blue sky. The humidity is low, leaving the air feeling crisp and electric. It is 9:15. I navigate my Porsche Panamera down the winding asphalt road leading toward the club entrance. The leather steering wheel feels smooth and cool under my palms. The cabin is silent, insulated by heavy acoustic glass. The contrast between this machine and the peeling, baking interior of the Toyota Corolla where I spent 63 nights is a tangible metric of the distance I have traveled. I pull the Porsche onto the wide shoulder of the road, parking directly across the street from the newly erected 20-foot billboard. I leave the engine running. The deep, dark tint of my windows renders the interior of the cabin entirely invisible from the street. I sit in the climate-controlled air, resting my hands in my lap, and wait. Sunday brunch at this specific club is a mandatory ritual for the Baton Rouge elite. Despite their humiliating eviction, despite the downgrade to a cramped two-bedroom condo, my parents will attend. They will wear their finest remaining clothes. They will attempt to smile over crystal glasses of orange juice and pretend their financial ruin is merely a temporary, strategic reallocation of assets. They will rely on the polite Southern fiction that their peers do not notice the blood in the water. At 9:22, a familiar silver Lexus turns off the main highway and merges onto the private club road. The vehicle approaches at a steady, measured pace. I recognize the rigid posture of the driver through the clear windshield. My father is at the wheel. My mother sits in the passenger seat, wearing her signature string of pearls. Her chin is tilted upward in a fragile imitation of grace. The Lexus cruises toward the wrought iron gates. To reach the stone pillars, the driver must look straight ahead, scanning the horizon where the sprawling green buffer used to be. The sun catches the stark white surface of the 20-foot canvas. The physical reaction of the vehicle is instantaneous. The brake lights of the Lexus ignite with a sudden, searing red glare. The tires let out a sharp, abrasive squeal against the pavement. The heavy silver sedan swerves a fraction of an inch toward the shoulder before jolting to a dead, shuddering halt right in the middle of the entrance lane. For 10 agonizing seconds, the car idles in the center of the road. No one moves. The exhaust curls into the morning air. Then, the driver's side door clicks open. My father steps out onto the blacktop. He is wearing a tailored linen suit, but his shoulders lack their usual arrogant structure. He leaves the car door hanging wide open. He stands in the middle of the road, oblivious to a black SUV pulling up behind him. He tilts his head back and stares up at the vinyl canvas blocking the sky. I watch his eyes track the bold lettering. I can see the exact moment his brain processes the data. He reads the name Apex Logistics. He reads the words Vanguard Holdings. He connects the two entities, the phantom corporation that purchased Marcus's debt, the ruthless machine that seized his Garden District mansion, the ghost he spent $10,000 trying to unmask with a private investigator, is not a foreign hedge fund. It is the company owned by the daughter he told to figure it out. Through the passenger window, I observe my mother. Her meticulously constructed facade crumbles into dust. She raises both trembling hands and covers her mouth. Her eyes are wide, fixed on the street address printed in the bottom corner of the sign. The reality crashes into her with the kinetic force of a freight train. The daughter she exiled to an industrial warehouse did not just survive the gutter. She bought the bank, seized the ancestral home, and is now paving over the view at the country club with a truck stop. I sit in the driver's seat of the Porsche. My hand rests on the smooth metal of the gear selector. A year ago, sitting in the humid dark of a gym parking lot, I would have craved a confrontation. I would have wanted to roll down the tinted window, look them in the eye, and deliver a cutting speech about the mathematics of their betrayal. I would have wanted to see my father lower his head. I would have wanted to hear my mother offer a desperate, weeping apology. But true power does not require a monologue. True power is a quiet, undisputed fact sitting on a table. The 20-foot sign looming over their heads does all the speaking required. It tells them they are defeated. It tells them their social currency is bankrupt. It tells them the brass key opens nothing and the lock no longer belongs to them. I do not lower the glass. I do not sound the horn. I watch my father stand frozen on the asphalt, a broken man staring at the monument of his own fatal miscalculation, holding up the line of wealthy patrons trying to reach their Sunday brunch. I pull the gear selector into drive. I ease my foot onto the accelerator. The Porsche glides smoothly away from the shoulder, merging into the opposite lane. I leave them standing in the road, suffocating under the shadow of the empire I built in the dark. I drive back toward the city skyline, the low hum of the engine providing a steady rhythm against the pavement. Some wounds heal, and some wounds become the concrete foundation for something much stronger. If you have ever been the daughter expected to disappear, tell me, what did you build in the dark? Drop a comment and hit subscribe. There is a profound, quiet tragedy in watching a family dismantle its own foundation. We are raised to believe that the American family is a sanctuary, a structure built on the bedrock of unconditional support, mutual respect, and shared heritage. We are taught that parents are the ultimate guardians of our potential, the ones who will stand in the gap when the rest of the world turns its back. But what happens when the architects of your life view you not as a child to be nurtured, but as a liability on a social ledger? The story of the Dixon family is not merely a tale of corporate revenge or financial maneuvering. At its core, it is a devastating examination of conditional love and the catastrophic cost of parental arrogance. It serves as a stark mirror held up to the values we prioritize when raising children in a culture that frequently confuses the appearance of success with the substance of character. Richard and Diane Dixon did not fail overnight. Their collapse was the result of a decades-long erosion of fundamental parenting principles. In their desperate pursuit to maintain a pristine country club facade, they forgot the primary duty of a parent, to guide and protect the child you were given, rather than the polished proxy you wish you had. They looked at Elena, a woman possessing the fierce, independent grit that built the very fabric of American industry, and saw only an embarrassment. They saw dirty logistics, rough edges, and a refusal to conform to the quiet, compliant expectations of the Garden District. In Marcus, they found a digestible substitute. He wore the right suits, held the right banking title, and played the right golf courses. To protect their proximity to his illusion of wealth, they committed the ultimate parental sin. They sacrificed their own flesh and blood. The tragedy here lies in a profound lack of emotional awareness. A traditional family structure derives its strength from fairness and honesty. When parents begin to play favorites, when they secretly orchestrate the financial ruin of one child to subsidize the aesthetic of another, they sever the unspoken contract of kinship. The $90,000 bribe paid to Marcus, the silent theft of Elena's seed capital, the relocation of a grandmother's antique table, these were not just financial transactions. They were calculated acts of erasure. The Dixons used their wealth as a weapon of conformity, demanding that their daughter shrink so their social standing could remain intact. True long-term guidance requires a parent to look past their own insecurities and recognize the unique architecture of their child's spirit. It requires the humility to understand that your child's path may not resemble your own, and that their definition of success might not fit neatly into your social calendar. If Richard and Diane had possessed a fraction of this emotional intelligence, they would have recognized the empire builder sitting at their kitchen island. They would have seen the resilience that allowed a young woman to endure 63 nights in the front seat of a sedan while coding a digital freight network. Instead, they chose the fragile comfort of optics. They chose the lie. And in doing so, they taught their daughters a chilling lesson. Your worth in this family is entirely dependent on your utility to our image. Olivia absorbed this lesson by becoming compliant, ultimately finding her own life shattered when the family's financial facade cracked. Elena absorbed this lesson by turning her heart to steel, learning that if her family would not provide a sanctuary, she would have to build a fortress. Raising children with integrity means teaching them the value of an honest ledger, not just in banking, but in human relationships. It means demonstrating that loyalty cannot be purchased with a home equity line of credit, and that true respect is earned through character, not zip codes. When parents fail to model these values, they do not just lose their children's trust, they risk engineering their own isolation. The Dixon parents assumed they held all the power because they held the purse strings. They failed to realize that when you strip a person of everything they have, you also strip them of their fear. You create a force of nature that no longer owes you obedience. This narrative forces us to pause and examine the silent currents running beneath our own roofs. How often do we subtly steer our children away from their true passions because we fear how their choices might reflect on us? How often do we prioritize the comfort of the neighborhood whisper network over the emotional safety of our own dining rooms? The answers to these questions shape the adults our children will become. They determine whether we are raising individuals who will return home with a key or individuals who will drill out the locks. Stories like Elena's resonate because they tap into a universal anxiety about trust, betrayal, and the limits of familial obligation. They remind us that the titles of mother and father are not lifelong immunities against accountability. They are daily responsibilities that must be earned. This is the exact kind of exploration we are dedicated to bringing you. If you find yourself captivated by the quiet strength of those who rebuild their lives from the ashes of betrayal, we invite you to become part of our community. Follow the channel Aura Vengeance, subscribe, share your thoughts, and join us as we continue to unravel the complex, often hidden dynamics of family, survival, and ultimate justice. As the dust settles on the empty colonial mansion and the diesel engines rumble across the street from the country club gates, we are left with a lingering, uncomfortable silence. The 20-foot billboard casts a long shadow, but the darkest shadows are always the ones cast inside the home. You can spend a lifetime cultivating the perfect garden, manicuring the lawn, and polishing the brass hardware on the front door. But if the love inside the house is conditional, if the support is transactional, you are simply decorating a waiting room for your own eventual ruin. Look closely at the table where your family gathers tonight. Listen to the things that are left unsaid. What kind of currency is being traded in the quiet moments? Are you building a sanctuary that will withstand the storms of life? Or are you financing a fragile illusion that could be bought, sold, and foreclosed upon by the very people you promised to protect? We all leave a legacy behind. The only question is whether your children will inherit it or if they will be forced to conquer it.